Welcome to the Eagle Eye Podcast, the number one show to bring you all things Club America in English, from tactical analysis
Pelota para la banda izquierda.
to player updates. We've got you covered on all the latest news on Las Águilas. Now, let's start the show. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Eagle Eye Podcast. Today, we're going to be breaking down the 0-0 that was last night's matchup against Chivas in the semifinal. And then, of course, we'll get you guys ready for the second leg in the Estadio Azteca. So there's plenty to talk and to discuss about. We'll talk about the good, not that there's much. We'll talk about the bad. There's a lot to highlight in that department. And, you know, there's a lot of intricacies that are going to be happening within the next couple of days in the world of Las Águilas del América that might kind of put the second leg in different directions. But to do that, to help me to talk all things Club America in English and to help you guys get ready for the second leg, it is none other than Mr. Chris Rivera himself. Chris, how are you, my friend?
I mean, we're gonna touch on everything that's wrong and what's good about life right now. But I'm chilling, man. I'm chilling. Everything from a personal perspective is good. Blessed to live another day, and well, not so blessed from the corajes that we went through last night. But we'll touch on that just now.
Absolutely. And I mean, we might as well just get it done, rip it like a Band-Aid, and just get it done and over with. We talked yesterday on Spaces on Twitter, and we sounded very optimistic about America showcasing a different side and giving us a better game than what we did against Pachuca. Do you think ultimately, even though the result maybe didn't showcase that, and I would argue that the majority of the game wasn't in America's favor, but would you say that, you know, this was a much better America game?
I think there was moments. I think it depends on what aspect of the game you're looking at. I think we were better defensively. I think when danger came, we were more comfortable, I guess you can say. I think, going back to the conversation we were having on Twitter, on X from the spaces, right? We talked about the pressuring that Pachuca and Pumas did that made us look uncomfortable going into these games, right? And it felt like maybe Chivas doesn't really give us that. They did. I think in the first half, that's all it was, right? We couldn't really complete passes. We looked very nervous, or not, maybe not nervous, but very uncomfortable, right? And it felt like even though we were making these mistakes, we were still very solid in the back, very prepared for whatever mistake we could make, and that's a positive. Like you said, it's one of those games that are very nerve wracking, right? Where anything could really happen. But this game, to me, like you said, it good and bad. We're gonna highlight those, but from a defensive side, it was very good. Offensively, we couldn't get anything going. I think until the very end, that's when you kind of saw it be more dangerous. But first half, it was very just solid defense.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing I would highlight from that first half was the great slide challenge that Ramon Juarez did whenever Igor Lichnowsky got beat on literally the drop of the shoulder. The ball came over. I mean, Igor didn't. I don't know if they thought they were going to play the high line and kind of get that going, but it didn't work out. And then from that point on, it didn't pan out. But great job, great recovery by Ramon Juarez, who I thought was exceptional. I see a lot of people praising Igor Lichnowsky as well on the timeline, saying that he had a very good, solid game. But defensively speaking, in that department, I think that is your main positive highlight from this, and it's the one big takeaway that I guess you're gonna have to grasp from this and just be like, okay, defensively speaking, we were a much better team, and we didn't give up silly goals and silly mistakes like we did in the prior games. So
Yeah,
yeah,
a little
that's
bit
huge.
shaky from the fullback's perspective, but
Hmm.
mainly Chicote. I think Israel Reyes was arguably our best player yesterday. But it just goes back to also what you've been saying all season, right? Momentum gets killed whenever Israel Reyes goes up there. And to be honest with you, a lot of people say, "Oh, he's not a." You could tell he's not a fullback, right? But I don't think he does a bad job. Maybe you would agree, maybe you would disagree. He reminds me of Adrian Aldrete to an extent back in the day, right? Where offensively he might not be that great, but when he's in the back, even Luis Fuentes, for example, right? I think he's not necessarily a bad right back. He's just not a great offensive right back, and I think that's where it also kills our attack. With that being said, I think he was arguably one of our, if not the best, one of the best players last night.
I agree. I think he looked solid defensively speaking. And yeah, I mean it's not his fault. Well, yes, he can improve, but how much improvement can you give this guy when you've kind of thrown him into the fire pit and kind of told him, hey, you know what, this is your position, this is what we need you to play. Defensively, you look solid, but going forward, you need to work on that. And I'm sure he is, and he's a player that's very comfortable on the ball. He doesn't shy away from it. It's just I think he would feel more comfortable with the ball in the middle of the pitch rather than being like 2 yards away from the touchline, right? So I think there's instances where you have to kind of take into consideration those type of things. But yeah, no, absolutely agree that the fact that defensively speaking, America has something to grasp at here and something positive to take away from. The negative, of course, which is what we're going to get into right now, is everything else from the midfield going forward. Everything looked lacklustrous. Um, there was lapses of this game in where I genuinely thought America was playing for the draw. Like they were uninterested going forward, and like they lacked creativity, they lacked focus, they lacked. I think the word is they lacked it just in all departments. In the midfield, I think creativity speaking, Fidalgo tried,
Non-existent.
but he kept making mistakes. Diego Valdez non-existent, and that's the thing. That's what frustrates me about it is Diego Valdez again, kind of cowering away from these moments, these matches. Like last season, it was the second leg against San Luis, and he didn't have a good final series against Tigres. I would argue as well. And this is an America side that I don't want to say it, Chris, but I genuinely believe it more and more as I watch it. This is an America side that looks like they're running on fumes. They're literally running on fumes. They're out of ideas. They're I'm not saying they're out of ambition, but I think that can only take you so far. And if you're kind of stuck looking at the drawing board and you can't make out a picture, then there's some concern in that department. And so I think there's some worrisome signs that we practically gave the game to Chivas.
There's one thing that you said yesterday, and it kind of stuck to me once I was watching the game. You said, "Man, it's kind of tiring that it's another game. It feels like we've been playing and playing and playing, and we haven't reached the end. It just feels like we're just playing." And I feel you, and I feel like the players, not all of them, but I do think some players are probably like, "Damn, man, I can't wait to just get my vacations in." You know,
Yeah.
like I put in so many hours and I'm tired. And I'm playing against teams that are pressuring me and hitting me, and these refs are allowing it. Whether it's clean or not, debatable on depending on the play, right? But I do think we talked about it during the Pachuca games. Sometimes you just lack those dogs that are hitting back, and I feel like this game, similar thing. I think you have to show personality. You have to show anger, right? That Chivas team is fueled with anger of always losing to us. Meanwhile, America for the longest always just prepared a celebration because they knew it was coming. And now it's like, well, maybe you're already thinking about the celebration instead of the work to get to that celebration, and it's self-inflicting, right? It's one of those things where it's like, hey, you just got to be focused. And I wanted to ask you guys, I mean, I was expecting Christian to be here, but you'll answer this too, because I think you remember once upon a time when Rolfi Montenegro went off in that Toluca semifinal game in 2012, I believe, right? You remember that game? Who
I do.
remember they
Yeah.
benched Chucho Benitez because we
Yeah.
needed
Yeah.
like 2 goals. We got the first one in. We were all hyped. Second half comes in. They put in Chucho. Rolfi completely goes ghost again. And that was one of our biggest issues with Rolfi, is where we felt, hey, you don't play to the extent when he's there and he's our best player. Do you think it's time to bench Diego Valdez? And I ask this because I feel like he's one of these players that feel tired out there, feel kind of like whatever, like I'm gonna shoot without really a meaning to shoot. You look at these set pieces, he sends them to the crowd, like it becomes a point where it's just like nothing you do has meaning behind it, and I feel like it's time to either sit him down, or maybe you have to play with a false nine, and maybe he just can't play with Henry. And I'm willing to bet that Henry isn't the issue in this situation. I think it has to be more with him. And I wouldn't really be against uh, Quinones being a second striker, maybe putting out Brian on the left. Because, like I said, it's an effort thing. They give it to you, and you're just, like, right away just shoot, and it's always to the crowd or to the defenders. And there's just no meaning to what you do anymore. And I'm not trying to drag what I'm trying to say, but, like, that's just how it feels right now. Like it just feels like he's just out there.
I mean, there is a lot to unpack right there. I mean, my short answer would be no, because I think you kind of have to ride the wave for this next game and just bank on him. I mean, he's wearing your number 10 jersey. He's kind of like a referente. Like he needs to step up in that moment, right? I don't think you can kind of give him the easy way out and bench him. I think you have to cling on to him and kind of be like, hey, you know what? I need you to wake up and I need you to be the difference maker. You saw it in this game in where he had instances where he could have passed rather than shot and maybe would have opened up a play much better. And a couple of chances, like the perfect opportunity that he had, like the great ball that Fidalgo puts in. I thought he was just gonna just rocket blast that into the back of the net, and he completely scuffs it. He misses it, and
You may argue he could header it too. It
that
was one
too.
of those plays where
But
he
I
could have
think
just headed it.
I think the header would have been a little bit more difficult. The goalkeeper did have a good angle blocked,
Yeah.
um, but I would have imagined he was gonna rip it or he was gonna try to find like a pass back into the box. I'm not too sure what the options were right there for him, but completely scuffing it was not one of them. And so I do agree to an extent that he is one of those players that you do feel like he's like, man, can't wait for my vacations. But we we don't need that mentality, especially from your number 10. Now, we said it time and time again, and the broadcasters say it all the time. When Valdez is on one, we are a different team. We are an unstoppable team. And you can't always cling to that. But at this moment in a semifinal, when you're so close to the promised land, you kind of have to and just say, you know what? These are the big moments. These are the reasons why you pay the big bucks, why you wear that jersey, why you work so hard throughout the season. And, he just needs to come up and step up. And he's just got to dig deep, and I feel it. I know it's hard and it must be very tiresome because, like Diego Valdez is one of the players that constantly keeps getting hit in these games. Other than Fidalgo, it's also Diego Valdez. So they know what they're doing. They know that causes disruptions. They know that plays into their head. And we know that Diego Valdez is a little bit fragile. Like he's kind of made out of glass in a sense, And so for me, it's just it'd be difficult to sit him in these next couple of games just because of the importance of knowing that you're gonna need him eventually, and he needs to step up. And so I think he needs to have a big game, and he tends to usually do it at the Estadio Azteca against Chivas. So if there's a glimmer of hope for Diego Valdez, it's the fact that we're closing this game second leg at the Estadio Azteca against an opponent that he likes to kind of grow into the game. And so we'll see if that is the case. But yeah, it's worrisome that him and other players aren't kind of responding to the moment, and so we need to see much better stuff. You're right. I don't think Henry's the issue, but at the same time, I don't think Henry's been able to do much because of the lack of service, and also, I'm sure he feels frustrated as well with the situation. So it's difficult all around. And just watching that game felt tiresome too. As a fan, you're looking at this and your team's non-responsive. But I will argue though, and I think you said it specifically yesterday, I think the result favors us more than it does Chivas. So in hindsight, there's an argument to be made that this game actually, Chivas was the one that failed to do what they needed to do in those 90 minutes. And America, they just kind of weathered the storm and kind of treaded water. And I think they're looking to kind of close it out at the Azteca.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of people try to say that Chivas had this amazing game. They were slightly better than us, if I'm being honest with you. I don't think they were this amazing team. I think the frustrating thing is that we couldn't really find momentum. Meanwhile, they had it, but also didn't give you this like oh man, they're gonna score. They had moments, but even then, like when the play was going, you kind of feel like, oh, they're not gonna score that. They're not gonna shoot the Ramon Juarez shot or block, for example, right? So I think they might feel like winners coming out of this game, but in reality, it's like a 0-0 now, like a tie over there, which is very possible, is in favor for us. That people will say we're struggling, we're not playing who we are, how we are, and whatnot. Now it's you have to win, you have to risk more. And what do we know about a team that usually goes and tries to risk more against us? They open up and they give us the opportunities. Pachuca was a struggle, right, in CONCACAF and in Liguilla. Why? Because they had the advantage. They could have defended and made everything frustrating for us. But once you seen us with the advantage, right? Once Quiñones scored that goal, what happened? They had to open up and they couldn't. They couldn't compete with us. Same thing here, right? If Chivas goes into the second leg opening up, we have the players that are very capable of scoring off of those opportunities. So, like I said, I don't think they necessarily were this great team yesterday, but this had, like you said, 0-0 perfect for us. Where we they open up, they try to score. They have to go and try to get that goal early on, because the longer it gets, the more chances we're gonna get, and they don't want that. If they're able to get that goal early, they're gonna be frustrating all game for us. And if we get a goal, I think it's over with. I think it's gonna be hell for us, but I do think two technically a 2-0 lead, right? I think we thrive off of that.
Yeah, we definitely would. My only worry is, that America doesn't learn from their mistakes, right? We said it was kind of done and dusted in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Chivas comes in, kind of punches us in the face. We don't really have a reaction until a little bit later on. Luckily enough, the margin was big enough where we could absorb those punches. But in this one, your margins are much less, and so yeah, I just want to see a much more America side that is a much better America side. Excuse me, that is more dominant, not just on the ball, but kind of in the with their ideas of what they want to do, what they want to achieve in the game. Because throughout that game against Chivas in the Akron, it felt very clueless of what the players wanted to do, what the game plan was. I felt like everyone was kind of a little bit discombobulated. And, like AP Jr. said, the most frustrating part of it all was that they always kept playing back to Malagon. A lot of resets had to be done, so it just, I want to see a much more dominant America side, and then I think we can all agree that Chivas didn't outplay us. They had a better game, I feel, because we just didn't play to our standards. And it's not like, oh, they kind of played us out of the park. It was more like we didn't do our job right, and that's why they had the better game. So again,
I think the judgment comes from the fact that one team has played almost flawless and another team had more flaws. So when you look at this game, it stands out that the other team is looking better because the other team isn't looking at like their normal self, right? And then the day, the results are what matters the most. It doesn't matter if they, like they say, it doesn't matter how pretty you play if you lose, right? No one
yeah,
talks about the team that played prettier. They talk about the
the
winner,
team that advanced.
and it was 0-0, right? Maybe it's a different type of taste of 0-0, but in the end of the day, if America passes over a 1-0 or a 1-1 or a 2-2 or another 0-0, no one's gonna talk about the even though they try to force these conversations, the most deserving team got eliminated. None of that matters. We didn't score, right? Doesn't matter. There's a reason why we play this whole season for standings and whatnot because there's advantages and stuff like that. So
Absolutely.
we have now. I'll tell you this: I expect the better America side, like too. I think we have to be better because I do think you play like that, you can't just be hoping. It can't be one of those situations where you just hope they don't score. No, we have to go out there and score. We have to be out there and be better.
And I hope they're listening right now too, and they're thinking, yeah, we're gonna be better. We need to do better. But it does feel that there's this tone of like it's draining for the players to be like, all right, here we go, another game, another this, another that. But really, I mean, you're literally almost at the finish line. You got one more game, one more 90 minutes, and then you can just kind of go all out in the finals and make history, right? I mean, you're at the cusp of being able to do that. Now, did we expect it to be pretty all the time? Yes, but that's just because of the fandom and the sometimes unrealistic expectations that us as Americanistas impose on the team. But at the end of the day, like if you made it to the final and you made it out of just sheer bare minimum effort, but you made it to the final and you won the final by like one goal, like it was a 1-0 type of situation, and you lifted the trophy at the end of the day, that's what's going to go down in history, that you won the championship. It's not going to go down like, oh my God, these guys played terrible during the game. Yeah, like it was non-deserving, right? There's always going to have people that are going to bring it up, but at the end of the day, the facts are going to be the facts. And if you can lift another trophy, even if you play at the bare minimum, I think that says a lot, actually, because it just shows the determination of wanting to get to your objective. Even if it meant like you had to kind of eventually crawl past the finish line. But if you get there, you get there. And so we'll see. But yeah, I think you, me, and everyone else in the world is expecting a much better America side. And I would expect Chivas is expecting that too. So that's why I feel like they're looking at this one and they're thinking, this was a missed opportunity here. Just kind of like how America had a missed opportunity with Pachuca in the CONCACAF Champions Cup when we didn't settle it down in the first leg and we kind of didn't go with an advantage to Hidalgo. We kind of shot ourselves in the foot there, and we saw the outcome of that. And so this could be a situation like that where Chivas needed to get a result at the Akron, and this result favors us. And so now we are definitely in the driver's seat, and America needs to remember that. And so it's just game management, I think, is going to be important, right? You don't have to go out there and score 3, 6, 9 goals a game in order to look like the best team or be a dominant team. Sometimes you just got to play simple, and sometimes you just got to, you know, play a simple style of football, manage the game right, move the ball around, make them run, make them chase you. Even if you're not getting to the front, like sometimes it feels like America wants to walk the ball into the back of the net. Sometimes you don't have that luxury. You know, I want America to finish their chances, and let me rephrase that. I want America to finish their plays, right? Because sometimes they're not clear cut chances, but if you finish a play, the ball's dead, you reset, and now things are looking different. Because let's face it, Chivas has speed and they can pinch us on a counterattack. And so that's the last thing you want to do. That's why finishing chances are great. Even if you think you're going to skyrocket it, just finish your chances. And at the end of the day, you reset and then you look at it differently. But you know what? This sucks, Chris, that we have to talk about. And America said that has to plant themselves and play like this. And where all season long, we thought, we're just doing what we were doing last year and we're going to look just as dominant.
Yeah, man, and like I've been saying, we just been exposed to not being able to handle that pressure, and I don't mean like pressure from the media. I mean like literally that pressure on the field whenever Fidalgo has the ball, here comes two. Here's one. There's someone on your neck. Oh, he's breathing. Getting hit, right? And that's what I mean by we need dogs. It's not necessarily I mean we need players just that hit back. No, we need players to really be able to handle that pressure and not really break. And I'm not saying we're breaking, but you could tell a lot of these players are uncomfortable. I will say though, we're not highlighting the fact that Jardinez's tactics is kind of sabotaging this team as well. Sendejas on the left, on paper, I don't mind it. I get what he's trying to do, especially when you have uh Piojo Alvarado right on that side, where you have to kind of slow him down, and maybe you don't trust Chicote to do that. I get it, right? But on the attack, anytime he moves Sendejas, like something since the beginning of the season, right? People came at Sendejas for dropping down too much, and I was on his defense, right? And I get it. But it's starting to look like Sendejas is probably a bigger key player than people want to give him credit for, right? Because anytime he's being moved, anytime he has to be on the defense, the offense doesn't move. And whenever they just let him be a winger, go out there and try to score, the offense goes, just goes. They play to their potential. So maybe it's time to just move him back to the right side and just let him be Sendejas that we know, right? Quiñones needs to start next game. I think that's not a question. I think Javairo. Here's another thing that bothered me about yesterday is that you put in Javairo and then you don't even play at all on the right side. Everything was on the left. And of course, everything on the left with Sendejas and with Fidalgo and Chicote. And the right side, anytime they would go over there, like Javairo would have this short distance from making anything. He never really got that run, that space that he could probably work with. And I feel like, you know what? If you're gonna put out Javairo out there, you're gonna make him play, or else he's not gonna have the impact that we want. He's not gonna track back. He can, but it's not like that's his specialty, right? What he's gonna do is you put the ball on his feet, and he's gonna make that dribble. He's gonna make that run, and he's gonna either find a way to cut in and shoot, or he's gonna make a cross that's gonna probably be a very accurate cross. And you didn't even see that yesterday. Instead, you pushed it to Sendejas, and like you guys been saying, he doesn't look comfortable on that side, and it's not his fault because obviously he can't play that position, but he's not gonna play it in that situation, where everyone's on you. Like, no, you need to move the ball around, move it to the right, move to the left, center, move it. Don't be scared to force it into the. That's another thing that I kind of get annoyed of at times, where they try to force it when it's like tight windows, and whenever it's not that tight, they don't push it in. There was a play, I forgot what it was. I think it was Valdez or Fidalgo, right? Well, I think it was the Fidalgo shot. I don't know if you remember when Fidalgo shot and it went to the crowd, which I mean it always
Yeah.
happens, but Henry, he was right in front of him. It wasn't a very tight window. I think if Henry would have gotten it, maybe he doesn't score, doesn't do anything with it. But it was a window where he could have got it on his feet and Henry could have just turned and shot. Instead, Hidalgo shoots it. And to me, I'm just like, okay, there's other plays where you try to force it and nothing happens. But in this type of play, it's like, come on, you know. There's a lot of things to really highlight. There's really a lot of things to really highlight. I don't want to over highlight because I don't think a lot of them really mean as much as we're gonna try to make it sound. But it is frustrating to just see sometimes that they either overthink or don't think at all. It's never in between.
And that's why I kind of allude back to what I was saying, where America has to find a way to play simple, right? Don't overcomplicate yourself and don't force a pass when you don't need to. I agree with you. I think the tactics here aren't the best. That left hand side has too much freedom to drift in and kind of be like a second cam. Because it's not only Sendejas, Quinones does it a lot too. And I don't know if necessarily it's because that's how the players want to play, or if that's because that's the instruction that Jardine wants them to kind of drift towards a little bit more to the middle. But you're just creating more of more bodies in the center of the pitch where you need to stretch the defense. You need to stretch the opposing defense in order to be able to kind of find channels to run into or find spaces to play the ball into. And so I agree. I think you need Sendejas back on that right hand side. He is detrimental. He is just the best right midfielder we have. No discredit to Javairo as well. It's two different players, two different play styles, but I think Sendejas can do much more on that right hand side right now, and especially in tight spaces where he's not going to get much space to run into. But he's clever enough to be able to kind of find a way through. Not to say that Javairo can't and won't, but we've seen in these cases where once they start hitting him, when they shut down spaces, once they kind of triple man mark him, he just kind of gets lost in that midfield. And so, yeah, I agree. And Quinones needs to go out to the left hand side, and Quinones is going to be another one of those players that needs to kind of carry the team going forward. And so we'll see what the case is. But yeah, hopefully Andre Jardine kind of sees that his experiment kind of worked in certain matches. But you need to, in this moment, in this time, you need to go back to what's worked. And what's worked so far is the fact that, hey, Seneca's on the right, Quinones on the left. And that might even bring Diego Valdez back to life as well. So I think you have to go back to your original kind of trio in the midfield of, Quinones on the left, Valdez in the middle, and Senejas on the right. So I'll see what happens. AP Junior though asks a pretty good question. Y'all think Javairo would be effective on the left wing or Quinones?
I haven't seen Javairo on that left to really be comfortable to say him. I think we all agree that we love what we see from him. It's not that he's a
Yeah.
bad player. He's not. It's just situations, right? A player like that, you kind of want space. You kind of want that counter. You want that. That explosiveness is not going to work when You're being pressured by two, three players, or everyone's sitting back. And no disrespect to Henry, but if you had probably a taller striker, he'd probably be way more effective as well with Javairo. I think Javairo sent some beautiful crosses, and he's just simply not tall enough. And I think Quinones as well, right? I've seen some crosses to him where he's just not strong enough, or he just doesn't have the bounce to his headers. I don't know exactly what it is, but to me, I think you have to put in Quinones because I do think, as much as Ivan kind of comes at him for being tap-in artist, I think you kind of need that as well. I think you need a player that's in that area that knows how to take advantage of those opportunities. And right now, I don't think just having Henry out there inside that box is going to help us. I think what you need is Henry to pull his mark, and Quinones is going to be the one going in. That's another thing about Sendejas playing on the left. He's not going inside that box because he's not tall enough, and there's really no need for him to be in there, right? He's more to track back and defend and kind of cover the midfield. Javairo's not stepping in either because he's not necessarily that type of winger. So you really only have Valdez and you have Henry in there. And Valdez doesn't really step in there as much as we probably want him to. So you really only have Henry. So I think you need Quinones for the next upcoming game because if we do have to send these crosses, Quinones is always at the right spot. That's one thing I'll give him credit for. He's always at the right spot, whether he makes it or he doesn't make it. You know, I said early on, a player like that that's always there for these opportunities, I'm always gonna appreciate because there is players that go ghost. Reminder, Roger Martinez, whether he's outside, inside, he would go ghost. Quinones, at least, if he's struggling from the outside, he could go in and make an impact. If he's struggling from the inside, he can make an impact from the outside. Just one of those players, right, that has that type of style to him.
I mean, I pretty much agree in that sense, right? Javito has produced some good stuff, but again, look, it's a lot of weight to carry on to Javito if we're just like, you know what, you need to be have an instant impact, knowing that he's from Europe, knowing that he's coming from a different league and all that stuff. The adaptation period, we know the altitude's the difficult thing to get used to, and everything and anything that comes with being kind of your first season at a new club in a new country and all that different new time zone, all that good stuff. It takes time, but we've seen some good stuff from Javito, and like you mentioned, I think right now Quinones is just a little bit more poised to make an impact on that left hand side. But who's to say we can't see something like that in the off season? Maybe even during this season's Leagues Cup as well. So it's gonna be plenty of minutes for Javito as well to kind of either play one wing or another. So I think we'll get our answer eventually down the road, but this game being so important on Saturday, I think you have to play Quinones. So I guess that is that. Hey, P Junior saying in Dreyfus we trust, and you know what, I was thinking about that during the game while I was watching it. I was like, where's this Dreyfus? Why is he not in the stadium today? It would have been nice, absolutely nice.
I'll keep my comments to myself on that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'll
Please
keep
do.
my comments to myself.
But at the end of the day, look, America walks away with a reasonable result. It's not as tangible as we want it to be, but still, our own fate lies in our own hands. And like we mentioned, this is the best result that America could possibly get if they were not going to try to win the game. So it's something tangible, at least, that America can kind of find a way to make sure that they can hold their destiny in their own hands. So 0-0, poor game, terrible matchup, and it was just kind of a snooze fest to watch at moments. But mostly just frustration, screaming at the TV, yelling at these players to run and do more. But bottom line is they didn't, and so we'll see what the second half has in store for us. And talking about the second leg, we have a bit of club updates, some news, Chris, that could be detrimental for America in the second leg. So we talked about how well our defense was and how well both Ramon Juarez and to an extent Igor Lichnowsky played and the pivotal roles that they did in order to make sure that we walked away with that clean sheet. But now reports are coming out that Igor Lichnowsky is injured and is very doubtful for the game against Chivas in the second leg at the Estadio Azteca, meaning that we're left with three options here if he's not going to be playing. One, we lean on Nestor Araujo and hope and pray that we get prime Nestor Araujo for at least 90 minutes against Chivas. We somehow swap Israel Reyes into the center and play with him and Ramon Juarez and put Emilio Lara on the right-hand side, because it doesn't even look like Kevin is ready either. It looks like he's out as well for the second leg, if I'm not mistaken. He didn't travel with the squad on Wednesday. Or you put Emilio Lara there and you try and hope that that's the right move to make and Israel Reyes plays on the right. None of them are good. None of them give you any sense of confidence. Or you could put Fuentes there, which he has done in friendlies. I mean, how? First of all, do you think Igor will be ready for the second leg? And if not, I guess what is your answer?
I think he'll be ready. I think he just tapes it up and he's ready to go. Maybe in the game something could happen, right? Knock on wood, it doesn't happen, but
No.
that's usually what happens if it's that serious. They kind of tough like man up and just go out there, and then stuff happens. But I think he'll be ready. I think he'll tape it up. I think he'll put some ice on it. He'll be ready to go. I mean, he finished the game. Did he not?
Yeah, he did.
So I mean, if your coach is willing to say, okay, you're gonna play it out the whole 90 minutes, I think you know he'll play that 90 minutes. It sucks if he doesn't play, right, because now you kind of have to look at. I think what happened would be Israel Reyes being moved out to the center, and Emilio Lara is the right back, which would be very scary. Even
Yeah.
even though I praise the talent, I think he's just inexperienced and he really just needs to be loaned out. With that being said, I'd probably be more comfortable with Nestor Araujo, if I'm being honest with you. I think you kind of just have to gamble on the fact that he's a veteran and he knows how to play the position, and the little he has played, he hasn't looked awful, compared to how he looked before, where they put Linea de Cinco, and what would happen? They still go through him. So he didn't look that bad, but he did look very gassed. That's the one thing for sure. He looked gassed out there. So
Yeah, for him
I
to,
would go with
yeah.
him. I would go with him if you have to choose. I'd go with Nestor Araujo.
I mean, look, fingers crossed at the end of the day that Igor is ready, because if he's not, then I think we're at a disadvantage already right there, because Chivas will definitely try to kind of nick through that area, whoever it is, whether it's Nestor, whether it's Emilio Lara on the right, whether it's, Fuentes on the left. They're going to try to find avenues, and, no discredit to any player that I just mentioned, but they're not starters for a reason, right? And so it's a risky gamble. And so I think you need all your players, right? We're already down our best defender, and now we're practically gonna be down our quote unquote second best defender, although that's very much in contest.
Very
It's very debatable, yeah. But still, he's been a regular for this team, and to lose a regular would be devastating. So I think it's gonna be one of those things where I think we're gonna hear it kind of an update day by day, and I think they're just gonna wait a couple hours before kickoff to kind of see whether he's ready or not. But I do agree with you. I do think he's that type of player to just be like, you know what, ice me up, tape me up, and let's go, coach. I got this. So, which is very commendable to him. Like if that is the case, then hey, my hat goes off to him. Still don't think we should buy him, but that's for another discussion and for
That's
another
another
day.
conversation for yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But which, funny enough, we'll be having the conversation pretty much soon. Whether it's next week or in 2 weeks from now,
2 weeks.
we'll see what that conversation is in regards to the summer and all that stuff. So again, it's unfortunate, but fingers crossed and pray for the best that Igor Lichnowsky is ready to go for the second leg at the Estadio Azteca. We kind of spoke about what America should look like lineup wise. I think you don't move anything, and if you don't need to, you don't. But the only exception is Sendejas gets pushed to the right, Quinones comes in, and you have your typical, star-studded Club America lineup. That doesn't change. We spoke about what America needs to do tactically speaking, but what does America? How does this America side need to look like from the get-go? Because you would imagine that she was going to try to kind of replicate their game plan, like they did in the Champions Cup. Come at us, try to hit us, try to punch us in the face, make us unnervy, try to unsettle us, press us, try to use and abuse their speed on the wing. How does America feel that out, and how does America contradict that in order to make sure that within the first 15 minutes, you not only just keep your goal at zero, but you also find a way to be threatful going forward?
I think you said it yourself earlier. You got to make them run. You got to make them chase you, the ball, chase you. You have to just always have them on the move because you're playing at the Azteca. The adrenaline is gonna be there, but you know, high altitude, everything. It might not have an effect on Mexican teams as much as it would do with someone outside of Mexico. But nonetheless, you have to go out there and just tire them out. Let them their adrenaline just completely just go get out of their system. I think you have to be physical with them. That's something that I really want America to do since the Pachuca game. Just be able to hit them back cleanly, not great crazy or anything. But they're the team. They're the type of team to lose their head the moment you're playing that type of game with them because we've seen it before. They get emotional. They try to start fights. And even though we haven't said this, but they should have had two red cards yesterday, right? The one where they punched Fidalgo, and the other one where they also slid on Brian Rodriguez. That's both red cards. I don't think anyone really debate that. It was a very awful. Both were awful fouls, right? And the ref didn't give it to them, or didn't give them the red card. With that being said, you have to kind of play that type of game with them, frustrate them, get them annoyed. You know, they're gonna come with those things to us. But we don't lose our head as much as they do. If we start playing that type of game with them, they're gonna lose their head, and it's typical Chivas stuff. They lose their head in heated games, and I don't think they have the discipline as much as we do. So for me, that's what you need to do. You need to be able to have them chasing you, let them pressure early on, get them tired, and then be able to hit. Get physical with them. Make sure to be in their head. And the opportunities are going to come because they have to go and look for that first goal. They're the ones that are needy of that. They would probably want it way sooner than anything. So when they go and look for the goal, they're going to be openings. So for me, also, we got to be able to cross the ball, be able to pass the ball, create these chances. So that's really the key thing. Make them run, be physical, and be able to counter off of that. You're on mute, brother.
Sorry about that.
Mm.
I was saying that I agree with you that these players need to come out and mentally prepare themselves that this is going to be a very physical game, and that they too need to be very physical from the get go. Like you can't you can't risk just kind of thinking the referee's got my back. Like at this point, you have to go play. And one thing that I kind of want to drill into everyone's head, and something that I hope that Jardine drills into the player's head. This is still at the end of the day a Clásico. And yes, we might feel like this is just another one of those games just because this game has been overly blown by the fact that we've played them now 5 times come Saturday. And it does feel a little bit like overkill when you would just necessarily play them, 2 times a year? And in the span of less than 6 months, we've played them 5 times. And so I get the fact that you could feel like this is a bit of overkill when it comes to a Clásico. But at the end of the day, you dig deep and you realize this is still a Clásico. This is still has to be taken to the utmost and highest importance. And on top of that, also you need to understand that these guys knocked you out last year in your stadium in front of your crowd in a game where you had it and you lost it. So there needs to be a sense of accountability where the players come into this one and think, you know what, I need revenge. I want to get that back and I want to beat them. There has to be that drive, that killer instinct that they want to just completely be done with this Chivas side. So I think that's important coming into this game, mentally preparing yourself for a Clásico and a semifinal is huge, right? And then on top of that, understanding that you need to be as composed as you can be, even if they're hitting you, and you need to work the ball in a way in where they're chasing you rather than you're chasing them. And if we're gonna see an America side where they're gonna be playing like prime Brazil, where they're doing tiki taka, 1 ball here, 2 passes there, and boom, they break lines, blah 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 blah. Right? If we get to see that America side, perfect. But if that is not working out and you need to utilize space, even if you have to resort to a little bit of kickball and use and abuse Quinones' ability to play open space, then do so, right? Have Quinones and have Henry Martin kind of play off the defender's shoulder, jump the lines, play those balls, use and abuse the space. Um, if you have to resort to that, resort to that. But it's just finding composure and understanding how to read the game and manage the game, like I keep mentioning. And that is huge. That is critical. And so hopefully America is able to do so. Hopefully Jardine preps this side perfectly. Not to say that his job is on the line, but a lot of eyes are in this game, and a lot of criticism will come, even if America wins. Regardless, that's just the life of an Americanista. That's just the life of an America manager, America player. Criticism will reign far and wide, but like I mentioned, if you can go out, carry the game, do a good job, finish your plays. Again, I think you're in a position to where you can control the game and manage it properly, rather than you playing into Chivas's game, giving up the ball very poorly, very cheaply. Not being able to complete 3 passes in your own box just to get out of pressure. Like, they need to understand that most of these teams have figured out how to play against us. Now it's us being able to adapt to that play style and knowing how to continue to play our game without having any disruption, just because they're playing physical and just because they're playing a numbers game. So again, it's gonna be difficult at first, but if you can find the rhythm and if you can dig deep and if you can remember that this is a clásico, there's high stakes on the line, then I think that we're gonna see, like you mentioned, a much more better America side, and hopefully a much better result than any of us could imagine at this point, just because of what we've seen. So
Oh man, there's gonna be a lot of hard work. At the end of the day, that's what's gonna happen, right? The team that works the hardest is gonna win. I think you have to work smart, but I
yeah,
think effort is gonna come a long way in this game. I think what you've seen from both sides, were both lacked in was effort, right? And maybe it's different type of effort. For me, for Chivas, maybe it was more from the attack. You see Piojo run down everywhere, and then he gets to our side, right? And what happens? There's no one there with him. So that's one thing for them. For us, you see the lack of effort of movement. You see Fidalgo getting pressured. No one's going over there to help him and kind of release that, right? Be there to make that pass. Same thing with Jonah, and it's smart. What we see from Chivas yesterday wasn't anything new. It came from that Pumas game and it came from that Pachuca game. Pressure, numbers game. You know, we have to go out there and score, right? That's how you're gonna find more freedom, right?
yeah,
They didn't score. Now they have to play that individual ball. Why? Because they need to go and get that goal. America
yeah.
doesn't necessarily have to go and get it, but they will go and get it. Why? Because opportunity should present itself. So hopefully, like I said, you have to play Quinones, you have to play Sendera on the right, and you have to do what you've always been doing. Enough of this, moving players around. Enough of this, being more focused on defending. Right? I think that's what Sendejas on the left kind of showed me, is that they're more worried about defending and not losing the midfield, but then they get kind of cramped up, right? And that's when they start moving, they start
Yeah.
losing the ball. And I think you just got to play what you've been able to play. Be yourself. And I think that's how you're going to be able to go through into the final.
I agree in that sense that you need to be smart with how you play the game, and like you mentioned, it could be as simple as scoring one goal and just kind of calling it a day, just then managing the game properly. I will say this: if America scores the first goal, and if America scores the goal within the first 25 minutes, expect the floodgates to open. Expect an America side that could probably walk away with like a 2-3, maybe even 4-0. But if America doesn't score within like the first, like I mentioned, 25, 30 minutes, and we see like a goal like in the 60, 75th, and that's kind of it, you wrap it up, play defensively. I wouldn't even be surprised if America scores like in the 55th minute and like at the 65th minute or maybe 70th, we throw nothing but defenders on the pitch and close out the game like that. Like that wouldn't be surprising to me. Like would that be pretty and would that be America DNA esque? No, that would be terrible. But I could see, hiding it, trying to just be like, let's play defensively and use and abuse the speed on a counter with like Brian or Quinones or Javairo. You know, we'll see. We'll see. But it's gonna be an interesting game, like I mentioned. I know, and it's difficult for me to even do what I'm about to say, but I think we need to kind of all just kind of get out of this funk that this is just, oh my god, Chivas again, another one of these games, and the season just feels so long. It feels ever since that exit in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, the season has felt just draining and overwhelming, and it seems like it's game after game, and there's no real much of a break or rest. And you just feel like it's very repetitive. You're playing against the same team over and over again. But if we can get out of that funk and if these players can get out of that funk and just kind of feel that hype and feel that emotion of like, hey, you know what? It's a semifinal. It's against Chivas. It's against our bitter rival. The opportunity to get that revenge from last year. Like it's a moment to kind of grasp at and just kind of, like Dylan would say, grab the bull by the horns and just get the job done at the Azteca. So hopefully that is the case. Septal saying, hey, what's up, guys? Septal. Nice of you to join us. A little late, but hey, at the end of the day, made it right on time for our predictions. Chris, what are you going for? Tell me you got some good news for me, some optimism here.
Yeah, I'm repeating my 2-1 prediction. I think we get 2 goals and they get one late. I think it's one of those things where, I mean, it's paper, it's on paper, or it's imagination, in other words, right? We're trying to imagine how the game's going to go. I don't think anyone would have really expected America to kind of sleepwalk yesterday to an extent.
Yeah.
I don't think the whole game, but the first half. I think, you know, second leg at home. Chivas fans are kind of saying that they do better against us at home. I don't really necessarily see where they get that from. Maybe from the tie or the second leg in CONCACAF, and I really don't know. Maybe they're just going off recent time. I really don't know where they get that from, but nonetheless, I think the the atmosphere is going to be in our favor. I think America is just going to be like I said in the Pachuca game. It's going to be one of those games where the crowd is just in favor of us, and we're going to really use that to our advantage. And I think that's going to wake up the players. And I think, like I said, on paper, everything it's hard to really predict how the game's going to go, but I think from everything we kind of pointed out, I think we get 2 goals. We get one early. Second half, we get another goal, and then they get a like a garbage time goal, and it kind of ends like that. That's my prediction. I think Quinones gets one, and I think Henry gets another one.
All right. That would be good. That'd be nice. It's a great prediction. Hopefully it comes to fruition. I I'm gonna go bold. I'm gonna try to wake up the crowd. I'm trying to wake up myself in this situation. I'm gonna say that somehow America does get that early goal. America does open the floodgates, and somehow, some way, we wake up and we pick up form right on time. And lo and behold, America walks away with a 3-0 victory against Chivas in the Estadio Azteca, in a jam-packed Estadio Azteca, and a sold-out Estadio Azteca. And then we're back here talking about America in a final against who? We don't know yet, but we'll see what happens. But at
Let's
the end
make
of
a
the day,
prediction on that too.
um,
Who do you think
I
is going to go through, Cruz Azul or Monterrey?
I think it's gonna be Cruz Azul.
I'm with you. I think Cruz Azul goes through too,
Yeah, it
which is
just
surprising, right? Because I think many people would probably say the better team is Monterrey, but I think Cruz Azul right now plays a very entertaining type football. That I think Monterrey is just more flashy.
Yeah, and we'll see what the outcome is, but at the end of the day, I do think it's gonna be Lagumechi Cruz Azul. But still, regardless, I mean, if we make it into the final, we play against regardless of those two. It's still a good matchup, regardless. AP Junior going with 2-1 America. It's going to be a game like yesterday, back and forth. I just assume that AP Junior this time thinks that America is actually going to be wanting to score a goal rather than kind of walk the ball into the back of the net. So that's our predictions. And you know what? Make sure you guys follow us over on Twitter. We'll keep you guys up to date with everything going on in the world of Las Águilas and America. There's a lot to talk about, Chris, in the world of America. That's not just this, right? There's a lot of transfer rumors going on. I know there was this Paredes news that kind of broke from this Argentinian. Whether or not that's credible enough, we'll see if it has any legs as the weeks progress. So there's plenty of America to talk about even after, hopefully, a bicampeonato. So keep it here. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and keep it here on the podcast so we can keep you guys up to date with everything of Las Águilas del América. Thank you guys so much for joining us in the chat. Septal, AP Junior, Gershon, everyone really, thank you so much. Chris, thank you so much as well for taking out the time. I know it's usually odd. We usually just preview the first leg, don't really talk about the second leg, but this time we did a little bit different. Hopefully that means that America is able to do something differently as well on the pitch.
Yeah, hopefully they wake up, man. Hopefully they're not ready for vacation. Hopefully they are hungry, and hopefully they shut up whatever doubt anybody has, because it is tiring, right? I understand all those games and everything, but hey, man, you're living your dream with being a professional, right? You should
Yeah.
probably want to play more games and
And a
seek
final.
bigger contracts, exactly, a final and whatnot. I think, you know.
Yeah, I agree with you. R6 saying, how can I come work with you for you guys? I don't know if you want to come work with us. We're not the best. We're not great. I'm kidding.
They don't pay us.
Yeah, they don't pay us. Dylan takes all the money. He never really kind of shares it with us. But no, just kidding. R6. We can always talk about potentially you helping out if that is something you're interested. Just always shoot us a DM. If you guys are ever interested in collaborating or helping or just chatting with us, shoot us a DM over on Twitter at Eagle Eye Podcast, and we'd love to get in contact with you guys and just kind of talk basis and all that good stuff. But all right, that's enough rambling for today, Chris. Let's wrap up the show. Let's get ourselves ready. I'm gonna be at Disneyland on Saturday, and so I don't know how that's gonna look like for me for the game. I am leaving early though. I'm not gonna be there till like 9:00 at night. But I'm hoping
across the street from me. Just stop by.
I might have to. I just might have to. But we'll keep you guys up to date. Thank you so much for taking out the time. Thank you to everyone in the chat, for everyone listening on the road, at home, on the go, wherever it is. Thank you so much. And we'll be back to talk all things Club America next week. So with that said, you guys take care. Have a wonderful night. And as always, Arriba America. Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was another production of the Eagle Eye Podcast, the #1 source for all things Club America in English. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Eagle Eye Podcast and get all the latest news and coverage. And subscribe to our podcast.